Today we're talking about the importance or not unimportance of tri bikes and why I think that getting one, especially as either a beginner triathlete or even an intermediate triathlete, just makes no sense. So first reason is that they're not as aero as you think that they are. When you compare for example, a traditional tri bike versus that of a road bike with aero bars on it, your gains really aren't that much different. You're gonna have more gains by the implementation of a power meter into your training or let's just say using deep carbon aero wheels on your traditional road bike or just changing your position so you're much smaller, much tighter in terms of your aerodynamic drag. And so most people, they don't realize that. They think to themselves, okay, I need to go to the store, or I need to go jump on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, and I need to go find myself a used tri bike because that's going to make me so much faster on the road biking section of a tri. And the answer is no, it won't. Unless you're willing to spend the $500 on the bike fit. Make sure that you either have a carbon disc rear wheel and a deep carbon front wheel on that tri bike. Your aerodynamic gains are going to be really minimal, and really, honestly, it's going to come down to the fit and make sure that you're in the best aero position that you can. It's going to make up so much of the difference, and that's, I guess, the whole reason why you would go buy a tri bike. But in a way, you can't buy a tri bike without buying the bike fit along with it. So one negates the other. Even if you go get a bike and it has a terrible fit, you're not going to be able to output the power that you really need to. So, the next reason why I say, people probably shouldn't go get a tri bike as a bike, just because the training doesn't make sense. So for example, I live in Colorado. There are tons of hills and mountains in this area. The gearing on a tri bike doesn't work for that. And so when you think about just trying to get the miles in, the miles are what is going to make you faster, that combined with a power meter. So having those two pieces in place are the factors that really contribute to whether or not you're going to be successful in that triathlon. The type of bike you have, it doesn't make you doesn't really, it can make somewhat of a difference. Okay, let's talk about the difference. The difference that you're talking about over the course of a 60-mile race is when I say 60-mile race, 60 miles of bicycle riding, probably closer to 2 minutes. So if 2 minutes means the difference between winning your age group or not winning your age group and qualifying for a race like Kona or one of the invitation only Ironman events, then yeah, I guess sure, spend your money, but be willing to spend the money. You have to remember, this isn't a $2,500 investment here. This is a $4,000 to $5,000 to $6,000 investment. By the time you get the bike, by the time you get a good set of aero wheels, by the time you get the fit adjusted a couple times, you find the right position, and you really get it dialed in, this is not going to be cheap. So if you're not willing to kind of go that extra mile for a 1 to 2 minute gain over 60 miles, maybe a 4 to 5 minute gain over 100 miles, then I would strongly recommend that you bridge the gap, right? So instead of kind of going all in on kind of the tri bike investment, go get yourself a nice deep set of aero carbon wheels, go get yourself a bike fit, and go get yourself a power meter. That will make a huge difference in your training and your performance. That is what will take you from a beginner or intermediate cyclist to an advanced cyclist. And I can tell you right now, an advanced road bike rider or someone who races, crits on the weekends or kind of has a background in professional road bike racing is still on a normal road bike or even an aero road bike is going to trash any sort of intermediate rider on a very aerodynamic racing tri bike. It comes down to power and watts and body position. Another thing that I haven't talked about is that an aero helmet probably also makes up a pretty significant gap here. So if you had an aero helmet, you had relatively aerodynamic clothing, you had a deep set of carbon wheels on a road bike, and you were in a comfortable position in which you could just put out power, and that wasn't holding you back, then I would say, yeah, like you're gonna outperform someone on a kind of a lower end tri bike, or a tri bike that doesn't have deep section carbon wheels, and or that of someone on a great tri bike with a terrible fit and terrible body position. It really doesn't matter, and that's why I can't tell you, like, all my tri friends, they come ask me for cycling advice, which rightfully so, a lot of people do, and that's great, and I love to help people that I can. However, I just, they don't always like to hear this advice, but it's the right advice to give them. And so, look, here's the takeaway. So if you shouldn't get a tri bike, what should you get? Number one, you should go get a road bike if you don't already have a road bike to train on. Number two is you need to go get a fit for that road bike. Explain to that fitter what your goals are. Just saying, hey, I'm wanting to use this bike as a cross-training tool for a triathlon. What could this fit look like if I also wanted to clip on aero bars to my handlebars? How can you set me up for success there? So bike fit, super, super important. Number three, no questions asked, is power meter. I would go get a power meter, and once you have those three components and you're utilizing your power meter in training, you are going to be so much faster. I cannot explain this to you enough. That's the recipe for success, right there. Now, from there, I would go get myself a set of deep carbon aero wheels, and I would also get myself probably an aerodynamic helmet, assuming, let's say, you already clipped on your tri bars to your bike. If you've already checked those boxes, you have the road bike, you have the bike fit, you have the power meter, you have the aero wheels, and you have the aero helmet. At that point in time, I would say, if you still want to go faster, or you think that the difference between you qualifying for Kona and not qualifying for Kona, then yes, go get the tri bike. And at that point in time, you're going to move your aero wheels over to that tri bike if you're going to buy a used one, and or you're going to have an established relationship with a bike fitter already. They know your body and the limitations that your body has because they've already worked with you in the past. You've probably ridden on one of their bike fits for a year. You know if they're a good fitter or they're not a good fitter. And yes, at that point in time, you go and buy the tri bike. But you also have to know this. That tri bike is a losing money game. You are never going to be able to resell it for anywhere close to what you buy them for, even if you're buying them in the used market. A tri bike easily depreciates from $3,000, $4,000 to $1,500, $1,200 really, really quickly. So the other thing with tri bikes is arguably you have to buy the latest to get the fastest, most innovative aerodynamic designs. However, if you don't buy the latest tri bikes, your aerodynamic gains or your marginal gains theory is kind of out the window, which again, why I just say, just nix the idea of getting a tri bike until you are at the point where you're saying, I really need to make up 3 minutes. That was the difference between me qualifying and not qualifying. However, I would also make the argument that if you're going to get the tri bike, you need to get the skin suit. And if you're going to get the skin suit, then you're going to make sure that you're going to get those super fast Nike shoes. And then, yeah, you'll probably maximize your potential from a technical standpoint on paper. Race nutrition is probably more important than everything we're talking about right now. Hydration is far more important than anything we're talking about right now. Your training regimen and training schedule is more important than any sort of technological gear. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm just trying to say, live in the real world, be realistic as to how you're going to approach these problems as it comes to racing. Because the gains that you keep thinking you're going to get aren't really that tangible in some way. If you have a bad day on the run and you have the fastest aero bike in the world, it still is not going to make up for the time that you lost on the bad day in the run. So a lot of this stuff is just timing and making sure it all comes together in the end. But that's my take on why you should never get a tri bike.